Hello and welcome to Books in the World. I'm Nancy Richard, your host, and with me today I have Jason Walcutt, who is a local Cape Cod guy, and welcome. I'm so glad to see you.
Thank you very much, Nancy.
Jason is the author of Gaia Hunted, which is a brand new book. It's his first book, and I'm very excited to talk about that because I think this is the first time I've actually interviewed an author on their first book.
How exciting.
It's very exciting, well. Very, very exciting. Yeah. So can you just tell us a little about yourself?
Sure thing. Whew, the one question I wasn't expecting.
Of course not.
I probably these days I describe myself mostly as a father. You know, I spend most of my days with my daughter. We have adventures together. But for the past 10 years, I've also been writing fiction. And for those 10 years, I lived abroad in various different locales in China and India and Mexico. And I kind of drew inspiration from all those places. And I've just been writing. And this is kind of a culmination of those 10 years.
Well, I enjoyed your book very much. It's a fantasy novel, and it's about a young woman named Maddie who is unaware that she's very, very special. And it's a page-turner. When I was reading it, I was sitting on the edge of my seat while I was flipping through it going, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. So I really enjoyed it very much, and I was really fascinated about a lot of different things in the book. For instance, tell me a little bit about how you came to write about this particular topic, and maybe tell us a little bit about it.
No, completely. So let me tell you, I'll give my pitch for the book.
Okay, sounds good.
So Maddie Fisher feels completely alone in this world. After hitting her lowest point, she meets a group of women who believe that she is the lost goddess Gaia, a reincarnated being with the ability to remember all of her past lives. Reluctantly, she agrees to undergo a ceremony to unlock these past memories.
Because it's pretty weird how they come up and grab her to do that.
It's pretty wacky.
I wouldn't want to do it either.
Yeah. So, reluctantly she agrees to undergo the ceremony, but the ritual is interrupted by a god of war whose sole focus is Maddie's destruction. Mm-hmm. He hunts her from New York City to Hindu temples to the Amazon jungle. If Maddie is to survive and overcome her loneliness, she must accept the powers buried within her, which could either bring her ultimate wisdom or complete madness. So where did I come up with this idea? Personal experience.
Oh yes, so tell us a little about that.
Well, actually, it was about 4 or 5 years ago, and I just moved to Salem, in Salem, Massachusetts. And Salem's a kind of a funky, cool place. There's a lot of it's a real mecca for alternative ideas and spiritual practices. And I knew I wanted to capture some of that energy, some of that magic, so to speak, in the book. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I just finished another novel, which was a thriller, and I wanted to use a similar plot structure. We were talking earlier before how I love just page turners. I just love books that you pick up and you just can't put down. I think of like Marathon Man by William Goldman or Eye of the Needle by Ken Follett. And I just love those fast-paced thrillers. So I wanted to kind of combine genres, so to speak, take a thriller and add in these elements of reincarnation and fantasy and see what we get. But the idea itself, I kind of got inspiration from one from a movie. In the 90s, there was this movie called Stargate. I don't know if you saw it. It's kind of a wacky film. But what I liked about the film was this idea of the false god. One of the premises in the film is that aliens came under the guise of gods and built the Egyptian pyramids. Mm-hmm. And the thing I liked was this idea of, a person or a religion or a deity posing as one thing, but in actuality being something completely different. Mm-hmm. And then the last element was another source of inspiration was a television show. You might have seen it, maybe not. In the 2000s, it was The Dollhouse by Joss Whedon. And it's about a woman's path to self-realization or enlightenment as her memory and personalities are kind of always being wiped clean. And what I liked about it was that the characters in the show can suddenly be imbued with new skills, new powers. They can know a language. They can know how to be a doctor. And all this knowledge is previously inaccessible. So this kind of, suddenly you have all this, wealth of knowledge which is available. And I just love that. So I kind of took all these things together and kind of just came up with this.
Well, it's a wonderful example of taking all of these little pieces and all of these experiences and putting them together. All right, so tell me a little bit about your writing process. How long did it take you to write this?
Well, there's a real difference between pre-child writing and post-child writing.
Okay.
Yeah, as you can imagine.
How old is your child?
She's 2.
2, all right, okay.
So pre-writing, I was pretty dedicated. I would write about 4 hours each day from 8 a.m. to about noon, 6 days a week. I really kind of lived by the Stephen King idea of writing, which is just keep on writing and just don't stop.
And eventually you'll have something you want to keep.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So and I just kept on doing. So I'd write in the morning and then I would read in the evening, and it was really great. I produced 5 or 6 different novels, and poetry and short stories, plays, and then had a child, and now I write whenever I get a free moment.
You get a
Whenever I free moment.
She's taking a nap. Ooh, I've got a half an hour.
Oh,
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
All right, so, but this book here, when did you start it?
Oh, back to the
Was it
original
before
question.
child or after
It was.
child?
Well, it was before question. So I started it probably about 4 or 5 years ago. I'd been when I was writing this, I was writing other novels at the time. So I think if you squash all the time together that I committed, it probably took me maybe like 1 to 2 years to write it. But yeah, it's I feel very passionately about this book. It was really
it was fun to write.
It was fun to write, and for me, it's fun to read still. It's when you pick up your novel and you start reading it and you haven't read it in a while, and you're like, oh, this is kind of fun. That's a good sign.
Yeah, or you're not cowering in embarrassment for having written it. I've had that experience
myself.
myself.
I've done a lot of that myself, yeah.
Yeah, oh no, I can't believe I ever wrote that. But, all right, so tell me a little bit about the process of getting your book published.
Oh, certainly. So, as I mentioned, I've been writing for about 10 years. And during that time, I queried different agents and editors, and I never found, I guess, the right match. It was always kind of, it just wasn't picked up. And, I might have continued along this path of querying if my child hadn't come. And then I realized 2 things very quickly. One was I wasn't going to have a lot of time to write, and therefore I had to be super passionate about what I was writing. And the second thing was that I was no longer super passionate about writing.
Oh, that could be a problem.
It's a really big problem.
Yeah.
And so I asked myself, so why wasn't I passionate about writing anymore? Was it? And I thought long and hard about it, and I felt like I hadn't really produced anything. Like I didn't have anything to show with it. But then I thought about that. I was like, that's kind of silly. I'd produced 4 or 5 different novels and all this other writing that I felt really good about. And then I kind of realized, what was the thing holding me back was this idea that I needed an agent or editor to select me, to choose me. I think this is common among writers, is that you need to feel anointed. You need to feel like you've been picked out of the masses. Validated. And, I thought about that, and I was like, really, this is just my ego standing in my way. If I feel passionate about what I'm creating, and if I feel that what I'm creating is good, then, I should be the one who decides whether that's out in the world. So, I decided to do it on my own. I hired, a cover artist to do the cover.
Did a nice job on the cover. I mean, I really, that was the first thing that caught my eye about this book, was this cover is just exquisite. Who was the cover artist?
It's Abigail Drabkin, and she's an artist out in Seattle. She's quite talented. Please look her up.
She's very talented, yes.
Yeah. And I hired editors to go through that. And I had, throughout this book's evolution, I've had tons of people provide input and feedback, readers, editors. Yeah, I mean, a book is not the creation of one person. It's the creation of many people's input and feedback. And this book is no different. And I feel very good about what has come about of it. I feel very confident about it. I'm very proud of it as well.
Well, I found really interesting in the book as well the melange of different religious philosophies and gods and goddesses from different cultures that were scattered through the book, which was really interesting, because generally when you have a book about a goddess or a god, you stay within their pantheon.
Yeah.
And in this book, that isn't really the case at all. You're going from Nordic gods to Asian gods to everywhere.
Yeah.
You're all over the place. And I find that interesting too. And was that an intentional thing, or was it, I really like the god of war, or I really, from this culture, and I like this Hindu god from this era, and how did that work out? How did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, every religion, when you get back into the non-monotheistic religions, they all have a war god, they all have a love god, they all have mother goddesses. And so I just saw so many parallels between all these different gods, so many similarities. And I mean, my interests kind of are wide. I would just probably get bored if I was constrained by one pantheon of gods.
Okay.
And so I think it's just interesting to play with that idea that, so in the book, I create this universe of mother goddesses and father gods. And mother goddesses are kind of guided by love and peace, harmony, and father gods by intellect, justice, and wisdom. And the push and pull between them, I've always found, between those two types of ideals, not only among gods, but also in humans. I see that as kind of like part of each person, those two parts, like the logical part and the emotional part, that are necessary to be human. So I wanted to play with that idea. And the idea of the many different types of gods, I think it just kind of made sense when you look at it. I mean, I saw the division amongst many of these gods as these two bigger divisions. The characteristics, so the difference between, say, Aphrodite and Hathor, I don't know, they're kind of similar if you look at it. So why not, why can't there be an Aphrodite and a Hathor?
Yeah, they could. Actually, though, it's interesting because when you read, when you think about Aphrodite, she's been kind of pigeonholed into one place, where Hathor has not been so much. In fact, she's got a real dark side that Aphrodite doesn't get credited with, but does have. So it's interesting to see how that works. It's kind of like our language. It's almost a pejorative thing.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
And I also, what I like to do in the book is, kind of play with ideas of what we envision these gods to be. So many of the, Greek or, Norwegian gods, we envision them as one ethnicity. Why can't they be a different ethnicity? Why can't the person being represented can't be that?
Well, there's a certain comfort level, too, in dealing with the Greek and Roman gods and the Swedish gods or the Nordic gods, because we've read so much about them in high school or whatever. We study all of that. We really don't study the Asian gods or the African gods at all. We don't know much about them at all.
And there's just as rich and just as many interesting stories out there that you can, you just start digging and, you discover all these stories which are sometimes very similar to what we've already grown up with, just slightly
different names.
Just different names.
Right.
So it was pretty easy, the decision to go with many different, gods or gods from different cultures, I think just made sense. Also how the book kind of, the book goes from Salem to New York to Europe to India to Brazil. So it made sense that the gods in those different places should be represented as well.
Okay, so tell me, have you been to all of these places?
Yeah, all except Brazil.
Okay.
But yeah, I lived in India. I worked there as I worked as a microfinancier, which I was.
What does that mean?
I was working for a microfinance company. I was actually developing. So microfinance is basically just small banking. They're developing these small rural banks that give
Seed
loans.
money?
Yeah, like loans, very small, sometimes just $100 to people. And so it's an alternative to loan sharks, who typically charge far higher interest rates. And I was working there, and I was, I think, developing an insurance product in rural India, and it was interesting. I mean, when I was there, I got to learn a lot about the different gods like Ganesha, for example. He's represented in the book, and it was really amazing to be there and see like the festivals. The festivals there are different from our festivals. I don't know. They have much more flair, it seemed like. So it was fun to sort of get involved with that and learn about it, and learn about these cultural traditions, which were very different from what I grew up with. And Europe, I traveled to. It takes place in Peru, the ending. Well, and yes, my wife and I traveled to Peru as well.
So you find you've been all. Have you been to Africa?
Morocco.
Oh,
so
well,
yes.
yeah, me too. I don't know if that counts. Is
It
that
counts.
Africa light?
Well, you ask a Moroccan what they think, if they're
Yeah,
part of
I suppose
Africa
so.
or not.
That's true. That's true. But so you've been on almost every continent. Well, no,
not Australia, not Antarctica.
Okay.
Yeah. One day.
Close to one of these days.
Yeah, you need to
travel. You like to travel then?
Yeah, I think travel is such a lovely way to kind of open your mind to different experiences and meet new people and exchange ideas. I guess we live in an age where you can learn about anything, about anywhere in a moment's notice, but it's much different to be there and to kind of like be around people and to interact on that level.
Well, and when you're in a location, and if you're writing about it, it's easier to write about something that you've actually seen, smelled, tasted, felt, all of that. I mean, there's a different feeling to every place that you go. There's some similarities, but there are big differences in different climates and the way the wind blows. Everything is different.
Yeah. And I think that those small details really, I like to collect those small details.
Well,
I
that's
have
what
journals
makes a writer.
because I mean, that and interactions with people. It's you capture these small little moments, which you might not use it, but somehow it might come in. You might link in where you remember that one taste or that one smell, and that kind of brings everything to life.
So what's next for Maddie?
What's next? Well, I'm working on the sequel. I've already written the sequel to this novel. Now it's just a matter of editing it, and I'll probably this year start writing the third book in the trilogy.
So it's a trilogy.
It was always intended as a trilogy.
Yeah.
So just now plugging away,
Yeah. So is the second book sort of like sort of like the Star Wars trilogy? The second movie kind of ended on a cliffhanger because everybody was waiting. Is that the sort of is it like a formula when you do a trilogy?
I'm sure there is. I wish I had figured this out before I written them. Well, I think
you should have asked me.
I should have asked you. You could have given me all the secrets. I think I already wrote the sequel, and I kind of knew where I wanted to go with it next. I knew the next step in Maddie's journey and what she needed, because I knew what the ending of the trilogy was going to be. So it was just a matter of kind of, okay, how do I get from point? It's the same thing really in just writing a novel. You once you get the beginning and end down, you just got to find your way there. So it's a much different book than the one that I wrote. But
is it an easier process once you've already established the characters somewhat and gotten to know them a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think yes to a degree, but I think the impulse of every character, every author is then to create new characters, and you want to add in new, and you want to push yourself. I mean, as a writer, I always like challenging myself to do different things, because if I'm writing the same book over and over again, I get bored.
Well,
and that's not why.
And you don't want to get bored, because if you're bored, the readers are going to get bored
completely.
too. Yeah.
Completely. I mean, I think, you can totally. For me, I just need to push myself. I need to try different things, and sometimes that takes more time to write. But I think overall, I'm doing it more for the passion and the love of the writing.
Did you find it difficult or easy, or was it no big deal to write a female character?
I mean, I think it was definitely a lot harder.
Was it?
Yeah. Because,
okay. How so?
Well, it needs to ring true.
Yeah.
Because if a woman is going to read this book, and the first feeling that she gets is, this doesn't sound like a woman.
There's no way I would ever feel that way, right?
Then you have not succeeded.
Yeah.
I had a lot of women read the book, give me input about the book, which really helped. If you probably read an earlier draft of this novel, you'd probably been like, this is not working at all. But fortunately, I, as I said, I had a lot of help from a lot of female readers, and they really gave me a lot of great guidance on how to capture the voice of the person.
Yeah. To me, it was great. I was just wondering if, as a male writer, a female character would have been a lot more challenging.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Was it easier in the second book?
Yeah, because I know who Maddie is.
Yeah.
I mean,
so you're in her head more.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting.
She's in yours.
Yeah, I mean, we go in and out.
Yeah.
You create a character, and I mean, what you read in the book is just like a sliver of her life. I mean, if you want, I can go back into Maddie's past. I know what she was like in middle school, in elementary school.
Oh.
I know all the different parts of her life. Because I think as a writer, you need to know your characters completely to be able to write truthfully about them. But with the second book, it was a lot easier to capture, because it's just like, I know who you are.
Do you have any, words of wisdom at all for people who are thinking about writing?
Oh, yeah. Just keep on writing. I mean,
just keep on keeping on.
Yeah. Huh? I mean, I never went to school for writing. It was never something that came easy to me. But it was something that I really enjoyed doing, and that I felt really passionate about. And so if you're going to pursue it, just keep on doing it.
Yeah.
And don't tell anyone, don't listen to anyone who says that you can't do it, because, what do they know? And
have faith in what you're doing.
Have faith and confidence in your work.
And try to make time for it, I think, don't you think?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard. You're a parent of a young child, and it's hard to find time, I'm sure.
Completely.
Obviously, you're finding some, whether it's at 2 a.m. or whatever, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, if you really want to do something, you're going to find the time for it, no matter what. If you don't really want to do it, then you're not going to do it.
And are you getting a lot of encouragement from your family too?
Oh, it's been such an amazing process to finally share something that you've worked so long at with people. I mean, the amount of support that I've received is just unbelievable, and I'm really happy to everyone I'm really thankful for that.
How do you find the book? People who who are watching this would say, "Oh, well, we want to read this." How do you find it? Where do you find it? Where is it?
Amazon. You can go to Amazon. Actually, the audiobook is coming out at the end of April, so that's going to be a new experience.
Is it going to be Audible?
Yeah, it'll be Audible. So, I mean, if people want to find the book, it's on Amazon. And
now, I looked for it on Amazon and I didn't find it.
That is a surprise to me right now.
Okay, so you should check that.
I will be.
Maybe I was looking in the wrong place. Is it on Kindle?
Yeah, it's on Kindle.
Interesting. Well, I'm going to have to check that. Okay, so Amazon.
The plot thickens.
And at the end of the month, you said the audiobook is coming out for people who want to listen to it in the car. I highly recommend the book. I think it's a great book. If you like fantasy, if you like something that's quick and fun and has a lot of action in it and wonderful descriptions of place, character development, it's a good book. And it's been a lot of fun talking with you about it. And I really look forward to seeing what's next with Maddie. Let me know when it comes out so I can buy it.
Yeah.
Oh, and I did want to tell you that I was talking to a couple of people, I'll tell you their names later, but that said, oh, let me know where I can get his book. I want to read it. I know him.
Wow.
From high school.
Whoa.
Yeah,
That's weird.
Right, so this is what happens when you're a local boy, you know?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. You know, the amount of support I've received from everyone on the Cape is truly incredible.
Yeah.
And I'm really thankful.
And deservedly.
Yeah.
Well, it was really a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Nancy.
so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah.
And best of luck and keep on writing.
I will certainly do that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for Books in the World.